We're coming away from sport to take you live to Istanbul. Hakan Fidan, the foreign minister of Turkey, taking the stand there. Turkey has been hosting a meeting on Gaza with counterparts from Jordan, the UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Egypt. We're waiting for information on the exact configuration of an international stabilisation force for Gaza. Let's listen in to Hakan Fidan.
Today in Istanbul, we hosted a very important meeting pertaining to regional peace and stability. And we assessed the ceasefire process in Gaza, and we also talked about the humanitarian assistance issue. Indonesia, Qatar, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Jordan and United Arab Emirates
katıldı. Mısırlı mevkidaşımız da bugün bizimle beraber burada olacaktı. Fakat ülkesindeki çok önemli bir uluslararası toplantıdan dolayı
meeting in his country of utmost importance, he was unable to join us. Distinguished members of the press, as our president and the leaders of 7 brotherly countries met in New York with President Trump, this initiated a new process. Following this, the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh shaped a hope for peace, which was supported throughout the whole world. And in line with the agreement that was reached, the exchange of hostages and prisoners and allowing of humanitarian assistance was initiated. Israel occupation forces withdrew to the first line that was identified, and returns to north of Gaza was initiated. But of course, the literal implementation of the agreement is problematic. Israel is regularly violating the ceasefire and is eliminating the humanitarian assistance to reach its destination. We have now come to a very critical stage in the implementation, and we have a joint view as the countries who participated in this meeting. We do not want the genocide to restart in Gaza. We want the ceasefire to continue, and we want steps to be taken to a two-step permanent peace solution. And we're ready to fulfill our responsibilities regarding this task. And we do believe that the pressure on Israel by the international society should be sustained. Distinguished members of the press, since the announcement of the ceasefire, 250 people from Gaza were killed by Israel. And the attacks that is trying to provocate Palestinians should end as soon as possible. Israel is also not fulfilling its responsibilities pertaining to humanitarian assistance. According to the agreement, 600 humanitarian assistance trucks and 50 fuel tanks should be allowed on a daily basis, but we do not see this quantity arriving its destination. And because of these policies, the humanitarian assistance is either in the warehouses or in trucks awaiting delivery. During the meeting, we also talked about the administration of Gaza and the security. Hamas has agreed to transfer the administration of Gaza to a committee that is going to be consisted of Palestinians, and all these, of course, is going to make it's resistant and resist provocations, protecting the rights of the Palestinians. In the coming days, we also talked about the establishment of the International Stability Force, its definition and its constitution. And we also agreed that the mediators of this agreement should also conduct meetings with the Palestinian side. And we also talked about the recovery and the reconstruction of Gaza during this meeting, and we believe that international coordination is of utmost importance. Taking into consideration the approaching winter, we do believe that concrete steps should be taken in this area. Revival of Gaza is also going to revive the hopes of the Palestinian people and reaffirm their beliefs for their future. As the countries that participated in this meeting, we're going to closely follow this issue. And as participant countries, we also believe that agreement amongst Palestinians reaching a conclusion in the earliest opportunity is also important, and the contacts in this area are very positive. A unity that is going to be appearing amongst the Palestinians is also going to strengthen the representation of Palestinians in the international society. Distinguished members of the press, the Middle East has faced crises in the past, but each and every time this geography has created peace and stability. Today, as 7 countries, we came together with the understanding of joint responsibility, and we're giving a clear message. And in order to hamper the process, one should not resort to unfounded excuses and reasons. We should not allow any action that is going to sabotage the ceasefire or hamper the peace. The will that Palestinians have exhibited should be reciprocated, and the process to peace should be protected. This road requires patience and determinism, and as countries with this virtue, we will continue to walk on this path. I would like to thank all my counterparts and their delegations that have participated in this meeting, and we believe that our joint efforts is going to make it possible for peace and stability in Gaza and our region. And thank you very much once again for your interest. We will get questions from 4 members of the press. The first question from Bloomberg International. Distinguished Minister, my name is Beril Akman from Bloomberg News. In today's meeting, you also mentioned that the stability force that is going to be operational in Gaza was discussed. What is the current stage of that? And will there also be the discussion of Turkey sending troops together with other countries that participated in this meeting? Is Turkey going to send troops to Gaza, and what is going to be the task of this force? Thank you very much. The International Stability Force and its constitution is discussed at various negotiations and meetings. And of course, one thing that we are focusing on is that there should be a United Nations Security Council that is going to provide the legitimization and that is going to define the task of this stability force. There are some activities ongoing with respect to this sphere, but what we have discussed with the countries that we have contacted is, depending on the content or the task of this force, they're going to identify to send troops or not. What is going to be the job definition and the authority of this force is going to make the countries decide whether they're going to send troops or not, because they do not want to have any clashes between the definition of this force and the legislation of that country. As Turkey, as the President has mentioned, as you know, there were 4 leaders that undersigned the agreement in Sharm el-Sheikh, and our President was one of the 4 leaders. This means that for peace, we are ready to do all that falls on our shoulder. But as I have mentioned, the documents that are going to be created and the framework that is going to be created should be of the character for us to support this. Therefore, our diplomatic contacts on this issue is ongoing. The second question from Al Jazeera TV. Thank you very much. The Gaza plan that is pioneered by the United States of America, there are some serious concerns that this is going to be actually transformed into a tutelage, and there are serious concerns in this area. As the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Islamic countries, what were the agreements that you reached so that the Palestinian people can actually determine their own fate? First and foremost, whichever document is prepared, whatever the initiative that is going to be undertaken, the issue of Palestine and its definition that has been accepted and adopted should not change. In the end, we are talking about the geography of 1967 borders, a state of Palestine with a 2-state solution to be implemented. Up to this point, the Palestinian issue, the Palestinian problem, has been defined within this context in international law. Israel never agreed on this, and they never had a behavior to approve this, but the international society has based its opinion on this understanding, and this is what we are also supporting as a perspective. Therefore, the crimes against humanity in Gaza that have been committed should end at the earliest date, and the ceasefire ceasefire should continue. This is the priority that we support. But hopefully, this will be the current moment and the current momentum, because we do not want the Palestinian issue to be redefined by abusing this. Therefore, we need to pay diligent attention diplomatically, and we cannot and should not allow a new structuring. We need the Palestinian people to go back and address their wounds, but while we are making this possible, we should not allow a new tutelage order to be initiated. Nobody wants to see this. The restructuring and the recovery of Gaza to establish peace and welfare and security, there are, of course, some reservations that have been voiced by countries. The third question is from Haber Global TV. Eda Turul from Haber Global. As you have mentioned, many different countries are talking about the International Stability Force, and many countries are indicating that there should be a decision of the United Nations Security Council. What is the current status quo of such negotiations, and what do you think the content of such a decision should be? Distinguished members of the press, first of all, this is an ongoing process. First of all, we need to reach an agreement with a draft, and then it should be adopted and accepted by the members of the Security Council, and the permanent members should not veto this. This is a process. And of course, in each and every phase, as Turkiye and the other stakeholder countries, we are continuing our efforts and working in this area. This is, of course, a very sensitive process, and we need to be very careful and very diligent in this process. And all the steps that are going to be taken for the resolution of the Palestinian problem should not lead to any problem in the future, and should not establish an infrastructure for future problems. We're very careful about this. So Al Haber News, so the last and fourth question. Esra Craig, Al Haber News. Both the Arab world and the Islamic world believes that the Palestine should be administered by the Palestinians. What is going to be the administration in Gaza? And also the Palestinians, is there going to be a common perspective and a common understanding that has been adopted? First and foremost, there is an understanding and a common perspective amongst us. We do not have any problem with the Palestinians, but Israel and the other international actors that are effective might have a different perspective. But of course, diplomatic negotiations and advancing on this basis is to convene and for the two perspectives to unite and reach an understanding. What is going to be the text? What is going to be the system that is going to be established? To what extent the priorities are going to be met on which side? But our principal approach is the Palestinians should be ruled by Palestinians, and the security of Palestinians should be achieved by Palestinians, and the international society should provide diplomatic, institutional, and economic support for the revival of this. Of course, whilst this is taking place, there are certain adjustments that are needed to be done. They need to be done very diligently and very carefully. And of course, as the other ministers of foreign affairs and the deliberations we have contacted with other parties, we have talked about what kind of steps could be taken, because currently there is a ceasefire, but advancing into a much more permanent solution, this leads us to the basis of the totally different understandings between the parties. These are differences of opinion that have not been resolved for years. And the genocide and the war that has been continuing for almost 2 years now, there is a new understanding of security. So all of these being involved into a new system is something that will take more time. But we have hope, we are positive, and we will continue to do our utmost, and we will continue to work with our partners. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to Turkiye's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in Istanbul, where he has been hosting a meeting on Gaza with counterparts from Jordan, the UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Egypt. The understanding is that these Muslim-majority countries would eventually be part of an International Stabilisation Force, potentially, although we don't as yet know the exact configuration of that. Hakan Fidan said more discussion would be needed. A potential draft may need to go before the UN Security Council before firming that up. But he also gave a situation report, really, on the state of the current ceasefire, which he said Israel is violating regularly. He said that Israel must fulfil its duty on humanitarian aid access. This, of course, as we know, that the Rafah crossing, Gaza's only international crossing to the outside world, remains closed in defiance of that ceasefire agreement. And he also said that the UN Security Council, just to repeat, should define the role of any stability force going forward.